Hello everybody and welcome back to the Fortress of Solitude. Today we're going to be talking about Superman Unlimited issue 6 by Dan Slott, Raphael Albuquerque, Mike Norton and Marcelo Maiolo. Superman's adventure in the Kryptonite Kingdom continues this issue as while the hero battles the cult of Cobra and kryptonite poisoning, a couple of kids from El Caldero venture into the city center to find the Supermobile, excited to take pictures with it as they wonder why Superman is even there, let alone going into a mine full of kryptonite. One kid, who would actually be totally me in this situation, says why wouldn't Superman go into the mine since he's not afraid of anything. Slott continues this interesting look into El Caldero, especially over these last two issues where we can totally see it's rather North Korea-like. You know, everything that we've seen so far from Superman's POV is for show. The people are told one thing, but the ruling class is up to something else. It's all just kind of like showy, flashy things to make people think, oh, these guys are like really important. It's been great seeing those layers slowly being peeled back issue to issue and its true nature is being revealed. Down in the Tunnel 1 mine, Superman continues suffering the effects of the kryptonite radiation. His anti-kryptonite armor has been pierced by the Cobra cult, and Ron Troop asks if one of El Caldero's kryptonites will be able to use his lance to seal the breach in the armor. But the kryptonite replies that his lance is powered by kryptonite, so trying to help the Man of Steel might end up killing him. Superman doesn't want them to worry about him, since instead they need to get to safety, since he's going to stop the cult of Cobra from escaping the mine with the Sun Crystal. I said at the start of the series I was kind of intrigued to see how Slott was going to use kryptonite and its effects on Superman, since it's one of those things in Superman media that has like wildly different effects from, you know, interpretation to interpretation. So you got some that it just absolutely cripples him, he can't move, you know, do anything, kind of like what they did in Smallville where he would just like look at kryptonite from across a room and it would like cause him to like fall down and he wouldn't be able to move. Or you have like what they're doing here, what Slott's doing here, where it weakens him, it takes his abilities and it makes him vulnerable, and I like that interpretation much more than some of the other ones. That one like feels right because he does have the golden superpower that he's gotten in the last couple of issues to fall back on, but Slott is doing it here where he can't have that all the time, so he has to write a weakened Superman, and I appreciate him having those kryptonite rules and he's abiding by them and not just playing fast and loose with depending the situation Superman is in. It's always been a consistent how it affects him throughout the series. It also heightens certain parts of Superman's character in that the fact that he's still being a hero even without his powers. He's still trying to help people, which is something that Slott has been showcasing every now and then throughout this series, that Superman, even without his powers, you know, the powers don't make him Superman, and without them, he is still very much a hero. Nearby, the Cobra cultists attempt to contact their team leader, the guy who was killed by President Castillo, but when they can't get in contact with him, Lord Naga, the leader of the Cobra cult, informs them that Superman is vulnerable now, and this is the best chance they have at striking at him and removing their biggest enemy off the game board. The cult disable their hologram disguises and attacks Superman, Ron, and the Kryptonite, who wants to protect Superman from the assassins. The Kryptonites are a really cool addition to this book and are a great visual representation of this Kryptonite nation. Just these faceless, loyal guys who will do anything for their nation, and I have no doubt they'll bring them to blows with Superman, maybe a little bit later on in this issue even, but what I like is how willing they are to help the hero as well. They know what he has gifted them, be it unknowingly, and they still want to like repay that debt that they have or they feel like they owe to Superman, or at least have been told they owe to Superman by President Castillo. Makes me wonder what Castillo has told them about what he has planned, or how in the dark are they, like do they realize who he is and what he's doing, or are they just like blindly following him, you know, because of their patriotism for their nation. In another part of the tunnel, Castillo demands to know why Lois Lane is in El Caldero, and Lois tells him that she's doing what she's always done, digging for the truth. She wonders if Castillo is willing to kill her like he killed the Cobra cultist just to cover up the fact that the Sun Crystal in his hands doesn't actually belong to El Caldero or the President, but to Superman, thanks to the message from Jor-El within it. Castillo gets a great moment here where actually he might have some regret in what he must do. Like, he doesn't really give a shit about the Cobra cultist, calling them a terrorist. He did what he had to do, totally get that. But I love the idea that he has to think about killing killing Lois to keep the secret. He doesn't want to have to do that, and he feels like he's being forced into that position. And it's written in a way where you can kind of see where he's coming from, but also he's kind of putting himself in that sort of situation. He claims he doesn't want to do that, but he's kind of making up choices in his head to justify what he is about to do. It's a fantastic little piece for the villain, and I just love, just in these last two issues 5 and 6, what Slott has done with Castillo, and has really opened him up to being more than just like this kind of faceless dictator character he started out as. Especially because this book started out around the same time the new Superman movie came out, so it felt like they were trying to do some sort of synergy there with, faceless dictator of a nation. Maybe Superman has to get involved, and it was kind of echoing a lot of what that new Superman movie did, with talking about Superman getting involved in geopolitics and world wars and stuff like that. But Slott is actually making the guy, just this person who was thrust into this position, and it's testing who he is as a character and pushing him to his limit, and it's just so much more interesting. Castillo comes for Lois, but she ends up whistling loudly, not for Superman, but for the Supermobile, which blasts off from the city center and speeds through the mine. Upon seeing the Supermobile and knowing Lois is there as well, Superman is forced to go into his gold form, knowing that he'll be up against the clock to save Lois, get the crystal, and stop Cobra. Lois meanwhile gets in the Supermobile to escape Castillo, who lets her leave, since after all, he is the Kryptonite king and ruler of the wealthiest country of the world, so it will be her word against his. He smashes up Lois's camera, but in his rage, Lois manages to take the sun crystal from him, speeding off in the Supermobile with it. Superman, now in his gold form, takes out the Cobra Cult, well aware he's got 199 seconds left to do all of this before his gold power, along with his normal superpowers, are gone for a little bit. The Supermobile arrives, but before it can escape, Castillo calls for his kryptonite to stop it. The loyal soldier jumps onto the ship and attempts to puncture the Supermobile's cockpit with its kryptonite lance. Ron realizes that his camera woman was actually his boss Lois, wondering why Castillo is trying to kill her. I think this whole Castillo plot is going to get really busted open by Ron. It's kind of positioned him here for a good reason. He's getting to see like all of this sort of stuff play out. He's embedded in El Caldero. There was also that talk last issue about him wanting the Pulitzer, and it just feels like little things Slott is adding into this character and making him have a bit of a through line through these issues. And I just love that Ron Troop is getting involved in a Superman story. It's very far and few between stories that the Daily Planet staff actually come and get involved in stories, and I like that Slott has made that one of his mission statements, where every couple of issues we're going to get like a new member of the Daily Planet or like some sort of supporting cast member kind of take center stage for a little bit and be part of the story, and I think that's great. Superman, finding Castillo is after Lois, confronts him, demanding to know what he's doing, but the president asks for Superman's forgiveness as the hero rushes to stop the kryptonite. Kind of like there that Castillo gets a little cowardly there, and he just like buckles the minute Superman is there and just like pleads for forgiveness. Again, it kind of goes into this fact where it's like, does he actually like want forgiveness, or does he like realize that he's doing wrong, or is that part of the act? Like, he's confronted by Superman, no one's around, Superman could do something to him, so he's scared, so he's just saying whatever he wants. It's just like really, really cool little character moments from this guy. Lois, meanwhile, has managed to get the Supermobile out of the mine and back above the city, telling the Kryptonite that she'll throw him off the ship with a quick barrel roll. The guard knows that as a friend of Superman, Lois Lane doesn't kill. He does, and he's going to do so for king and country. The Kryptonite design this issue is on full display thanks to Raphael and guest artist Mike Norton, and I adore how 90s era villain coded it looks. It's just this black bodysuit with a simple color contrast, in this case a shiny metal green. Reminds me so much of characters like, the 90s look for like Guardian, Gangbuster, characters like that who have this kind of easy to draw, sleek design that could be used in like toys, or just like it makes it easier for the artist to draw because it's a very simple design, so they can do more in terms of like how it's positioned in the shot, and like the action can be a little bit more dynamic because it's an easy to draw thing. It doesn't take a lot of time to draw. Thanks to the Kryptonite design, as well as the Supermobile being used so much, and Superman having a new power, and just Mike Norton's art style in the back half of this book really does make it feel like a book out of the 90s or 80s. It feels very much of that era. Superman rushes to help Lois, confronting the kryptonite who refuses to follow Superman's orders to stand down. The guard says that the hero has no power in El Caldero as Clark grabs the spear, but the gold form begins to fade and he is out of time, leaving Superman completely powerless, so he falls from the Supermobile. Lois is quick to grab him with the long arms of the Supermobile, but in doing so she drops the sun crystal, which falls into the city below, and thanks to its proximity to all of the kryptonite, it begins interacting with it and reacting to its radiation. Superman desperately tells the kryptonite that they need to clear the area of civilians, but the guard knows that the hero is without his power, so he's useless. But Lois knows Superman is much more than his superpowers, as Clark confronts a group of civilians, telling them that they have to evacuate immediately, but it's too late as the ground begins shaking and giant crystals, the result of the sun crystal reacting with the kryptonite, sprout out of the ground. Even without his powers, Superman helps evacuate people, picking up an old woman and running her to safety, as others follow his lead and help others around him. This is a really fun little bit, since as Lois said, Superman is much more than his fancy powers, and his actions inspire those around him, and that's what really makes him the hero. Like, just seeing this guy with a cape and the symbol on his chest is enough for people to be inspired to go out and help others. It's just really cool seeing Slott bring that in here and show Superman is Superman without the powers. They aren't what make him super, it's his humanity and his compassion that does. As Superman, Lois, and the kryptonites evacuate the area, the giant crystal grows to the size of a skyscraper, causing nearby buildings to topple onto one another. One building topples over and threatens to crush one of the kids from the beginning of the issue, but Superman, even without his powers, rushes to save him, grabbing him and protecting him from the building as it falls onto them. Castillo meanwhile arrives in town with Ron, marveling at the new kryptonite fortress that now lies at the heart of his city. I think this is the most revealing part of Castillo here, as he just does not care about the people. There's all this destruction and disaster around him, and all he cares about is the giant shiny new fortress and what might be inside. It's all just an act for him, and now he's got what he wants. He doesn't really care who really sees it, and just as Lois said, who would dare believe someone else over him? So the people still love him because of what they've seen of him. They haven't seen his true visage, if you will. Ron knows that it's a disaster as the Lois and a group of people dig Superman and the unharmed child out of the rubble, finding that they are safe thanks to Clark's heroics. Castillo puts on the noble leader act, claiming that Superman is their greatest hero for what he did in saving the child, but also because of the gifts he has given them. Lois confronts Castillo, knowing full well that the fortress belongs rightfully to Superman, but Castillo proclaims that she is there illegally and her and the Daily Planet are no longer welcome in the Kryptonite Kingdom. He asks Superman to escort Lois and Ron from the country, or he'll hold them in trial alongside the captured Cobra Cult members. God, I just love it. In just this one sequence, Slott has made Castillo just so undeniably evil, and I just hate him so much. He's just so manipulative. It just all thanks to what he's doing here and just playing up this act and acting like he's done nothing wrong, and then trying to reframe the narrative that Superman gave them this fortress, and then also alluding to the fact that maybe because Superman gave the fortress, maybe he is responsible for all of this damage. There's that sort of underlying text to that. It's just fantastic. I love this villain so much. Superman knows this isn't over, leaving with Lois and Ron as Castillo ventures into the new kryptonite fortress, quickly changing into his regal attire and taking his place on the throne inside, telling the kryptonite with him that this palace has more than just kryptonite inside. It has knowledge from beyond the stars, and it will make him a true king of Krypton. The knight activates some of the controls in the palace and reveals the computers are full of designs for Kryptonian technology like weapons and war suits, things Castillo knows will outfit his kryptonites well. So I theorized that this would happen last issue, and I'm kind of surprised Slott actually went there though with this and gave Castillo access to all of these kryptonite weapons of war. I did think that Superman would eventually get a win over on this guy, but I kind of like that he just keeps getting one over on Superman and kind of getting what he wants. It's very interesting. I can't wait to dive in to see what he ends up cooking up with the designs and what we actually end up seeing him use. Outside El Caldero airspace, Superman, now piloting the Supermobile, asks Lois, who's aboard a cargo plane with with Ron what she was doing there, and Lois says that it was her gut instinct that something felt off about Castillo, and she didn't want to put any more of her staff in harm's way. Clark knows that because of what happened in the mine and with the fortress, he doesn't think he'll be welcomed back into El Caldero, and Lois knows that means they'll be selling more kryptonite to some of his worst enemies. Luckily, Lois is all over it, having her best man on the job, as back in Smallville at the newly built Steelworks factory, John Henry Irons and Lana Lang welcome John Kent to the facility, hoping that he's ready to help them out with their kryptonite trials, something John is more than eager to get started on. So this is Slott actually paying off something he alluded to back in issue 1, with John wanting to help out John Henry with his tests on all this new kryptonite, and it was kind of waved off back then since nothing really came of it until right now, but Slott is making that his next story arc, which is really cool, and also expands and kind of shifts the cast over into some other cast members of the Superman family, you know, John Henry, Lana, John, and the Steelworks stuff I'm really excited to, because they set that up in that special issue, the Summer of Superman special from a couple of months back, and we hadn't seen any of it up until now, so it's great that we're actually getting some development on that side of things. Superman Unlimited issue 6 was a damn cool issue filled with so many great little character moments from Superman, Lois, and especially President Castillo, who in just these last 2 issues alone has become such an interesting, multi-layered character that I'm loving to hate so much. He is such a shitheel of a villain, and I adore it. Plot is kind of going the way I assumed the Kryptonite Fortress and Castillo stuff was going to go, and I actually like Castillo is getting Kryptonian tech and is actively going to use it against Superman and you know, outfit his enemies. That's kind of a cool plot, and I'm excited to see how Slott is going to deploy that in coming issues, since he's been surprising me with just how much he's been doing good things with all these new villains and making them all very interesting and multi-layered and villains you love to hate, which is really important to me. So I'm intrigued to see what he's got up his sleeve for the coming issues. I'm going to give this issue an 8.5 out of 10.